Hello everyone and welcome to eSpace, the entrepreneurship space here at the University of Geneva for the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020. Today we've been talking about the topic how to benefit from the evolution of work, and related to this theme, this masterclass co-hosted by the Global Shapers Geneva will focus on the topic of getting ready for the working world of tomorrow. It will be presented to you by Peter Wharton, Managing Partner of Entel International Geneva. Hello, Peter, and welcome.
Hi. Hey, thank you.
So before we start, let's proceed to a little virtual housekeeping. If you're watching us live right now, you can either stay on the live or join us for a full experience on the Zoom webinar. For that, if you're on the website of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, you can join the Zoom by clicking on the Interaction Live button, or just go to the eSpace tab, or easily register for the session on our website directly. If you are already on the webinar, enjoy the ride, and don't hesitate to participate and ask questions. And now let's move on to the session and the masterclass. Thank you, Peter, for being with us, and the stage is yours.
Okay, hey, thank you. Thanks very much. I'm actually, very excited to be here, and I'm very proud to be part of this initiative. And, I'm looking forward to sharing my viewpoint on how young professionals and graduates can enhance their career prospects as we move forward. So maybe I'll just introduce myself briefly. So as you can probably guess from my accent, I'm from the UK, but I've been here in Switzerland for about 32 years. And so my career journey has been quite varied. I studied after university, where I studied business studies. I was a musician for a couple of years, then before starting a proper job. And really, since I've been in Switzerland, I've been working in marketing in tech companies for about 25 years. So started off in product management, worked at Logitech when it was a very young company, then worked for various, mostly US IT vendors. And I worked eventually at iAmega. I started out as product marketing manager. I ended up as their global vice president of marketing worldwide. So I was commuting between Geneva and San Diego for about 5 years. And then afterwards, I worked for some smaller companies as well, usually in sales management and marketing management. And then about 3 years ago, I started reviewing, what did I want to do next in terms of my career, what I thought I was good at, my skills and my network. And so I decided to move into recruitment, bought a franchise, and have built up my recruitment company since. So my recruitment experience has been in the technical sector, and it's been mostly the executive level sales and marketing management, some operations management, some engineering, but it's more in the commercial side. So my perspective in terms of where what's happening in terms of career development is obviously more around based on that side. Okay, so in terms of getting ready for the world of tomorrow, I want to kind of look at it in three different ways. So one is the long-term planning. So now if you're either at university or you've just started, maybe you have your first working experience in terms of planning where you want to get to, and what you should take into consideration when you plan. Then the next part I want to look at is more in terms of preparation, probably before you start applying for jobs or before you start applying for your next career, the sort of things you should be doing and things you should take into account. And then lastly, more of a tactical side is as you're applying for jobs, what are the things you need to be doing to enhance your chances of getting there? Because I think the hardest thing for anybody, actually at any stage in their career, but especially when you're starting out, is how do you differentiate yourself? How do you get yourself noticed by companies? How do you get them to hire you rather than somebody else? So I think there's certain things that you can be doing to enhance that side. So in terms of the longer stage planning, so if you're still at university or you've just started work or looking for work, you've really got to choose your career path carefully, and it's really about planning. And I think it was Eisenhower who said that plans are meaningless, but planning is everything. It's probably misquoting it, but what I've seen is that you need to know where you're going, and you need to be sure that's the direction you want to go. And then how do you get there? Because you can change your plans, you can change your objectives, but you should always be planning that. And even if you're midway through your career, or even towards the end, you'd always be planning, where do you want to go to next? Where is it you want to go? So from a candidate perspective, it can seem like it can be really difficult to find a role. It's very hard to get companies to notice you. It's very hard to find jobs. You may be looking on job boards or looking on companies' websites. And even if you do apply for jobs, it seems like there's hundreds of people applying for the jobs. So, and sometimes you don't even get a response back, which can be quite disheartening as well, and very, very frustrating. However, on the other side, for employers, when they're looking for specific skill sets, it's also very hard for them. It doesn't seem like it when you're a candidate, but when for an employer, when they're specifically looking for skilled people with certain experience, it's very hard for them to find them, because they can put job adverts out on LinkedIn or on job boards. They can get hundreds of CVs and find that there's nobody that's appropriate for them. So that's why people like myself get involved. We get hired to go and find what these people, who are the key people. And so that's why, as a candidate, you need to really see how can you differentiate yourself. What is it you need to be doing to really stand out from the crowd. So from a planning perspective, it's very important that there's a lot of things you can do to prepare yourself for that. So as a graduate, you really need to start thinking about what are you good at. What are your key skills, and what's going to be useful in terms of your career development going forward. So in terms of understanding what you're good at, obviously you should list this down, like do an audit if you like, what you're good at. But you should also look at your non-academic achievements as well. In terms of sports, what do you like doing? What are you good at? What are your hobbies? Do you do volunteer work? What sort of experiences there that are going to be useful to the career going out? And it's very important to note these down, because employers always look for exceptional people, and what are they doing to differentiate themselves. So in my line of work, I often hire business development sales managers for companies, and some companies I work for specifically are very interested in people that do very well in sports. Maybe they've performed at regional level or national level, because that sort of attitude can actually be good from a sales perspective, because it's good to have goals and to strive to achieve and to succeed. So it's very important you understand, what are you good at, and then relate it to whatever career you're wanting to do. Also, when you're at the graduate side, or if you've just graduated and you can't find work, internships are really key when you are looking for new roles, because if you have some experience or you show and the initiative or the aptitude to work, you're going to have a much better chance to get a job than somebody who hasn't done that. And the internship's going to come up on a regular basis, but it's very key. And one of the advantages of when you do an internship is that you make a network, and networking is absolutely key. And we find that many graduates often get hired by the companies they intern for, and sometimes there's not even an interview process. They get a role even before a job is posted. So it can be very hard to find internships, but it's really worth an investment in the career. Also, what you should be doing is you should be researching industry trends in terms of what you're doing, in terms of the career that you're looking at, seeing how jobs have changed. So, for example, I used to work in product management, and I worked for tech companies. And so when I was in product management, say 20 years ago, most product managers came from a business background, maybe a sales background, or a marketing background. And then we would learn the technology and we would do well. Now, I definitely did well out of it. Now, most tech companies are looking for people with engineering backgrounds that have studied engineering. And so that's a real trend in that industry. And so if you want to go into product management now within the tech industry, you're probably going to have to come from an engineering background. Maybe studies, maybe even have worked in engineering for a while. And so whatever you're looking at in terms of career, law, for example, maybe finance, there are trends. And there's lots of information on the web, so you can actually see what's going to be happening in the industry. And one thing that you should be looking at as well is what influence is AI going to have on the career that you want to have, and machine learning as well. So if you're going to be working, if you think you're going to be working in sales, there's probably less of an impact. But we know already that in certain, say, legal professions, a lot of that work can potentially be taken over by AI in terms of forecasting and logistics planning. Again, AI and machine learning will have a big influence on those careers as you go forward. So you should start looking at that, because you can still work in the career, but there are different jobs that may not be impacted. But you need to understand that, and you need to know what to focus on and what you should be aiming for. Engineering as well. It's very important to look at the industry trends and the job trends, because you may be very comfortable learning certain languages or programming languages, but it's not going to be. It depends on where you're going to end up working. If you're going to work for a company that specializes in databases, then the programming languages for database are going to be very different to the ones that you would see in fintech, for example. Especially here in Switzerland, there's a lot of fintech companies, and there's a lot of information on the web about what are the programming languages that are important or becoming more important. So you need to do your homework, because that will obviously help you when you start looking for your roles. Another area when you're choosing your career path is you should start researching what are the companies that you want to work for. What are their trends? Are they growing? What sort of roles are they hiring on an annual basis? And how well are they doing financially? If you're looking into an engineering role, see what sort of product concepts and design concepts are coming up, because it will give you an idea of what kind of roles they're going to be hiring in the future. So you really need to research, well in advance, the companies that you want to be working for. Okay, so that's kind of in terms of the planning side. The midterm, so when you're starting to getting ready to start applying for jobs, there are certain things that are going to be key. Again, can't stress enough. Internships. Find any way you can get to internships. Obviously, anybody who works in a company, try and get contacts. But it's especially relevant now. We know that obviously with COVID that there are fewer jobs around for graduates. At least now. Hopefully that's going to change. Once the pandemic eventually moves on. But if you can't find work, be ready to do internships. It really will stand you in good stead. Another thing is, if you're still at university, just aim to get the best possible grades. Again, companies they'll be able to choose who they work with, and the more you can do in terms of having the best grades, the better chances that you have. Depending on your chosen career, there's a lot of additional studies you can do as well. There's a lot of information on YouTube around different industries and around different jobs, so that the more you can familiarize yourself and understand what's important and what the trends are, it'll stand you in very very good stead too. Networking is obviously very key. If you have friends that already work in certain industries or certain companies, obviously you need to nurture that. But you can also get information from managers in certain industries if you identify who they are. A lot of managers are quite happy to share their experience in terms of what's important in their company when they're hiring people, what skills they're looking for, and so it's a good way for you to get information, but it's also a good way for you to get to know these people, and if they have jobs that are being hired, you may be able to apply to them directly. So the networking side is very important. You also see that on social media sites, there's lots of user groups as well, which will allow you to network too. So you can see what sort of discussions are going on, what sort of issues are coming up, or that people are concerned about. It'll get you more familiar, but also it'll give you a chance to get to know people. One thing you need to be very careful with in terms of user groups and networking groups is that it should always be free. People that set up these groups are usually very proud about what they do and the industry they work in, and so there's a lot of sharing, and people like to do that. Unfortunately, a trend that I see coming up more and more is that there are networking groups that are created that they ask people to pay for, and you just stay away from them. They're usually a scam. You should never ever have to pay to join a networking group. If you do, you probably realise that there's something wrong with it. So stay away from that side. On the social media side, there's several things that you should be getting yourself ready to and preparing yourself for. One of it is obviously on social media like Facebook and so on. Start tidying it up as soon as you can. Many employers, the bigger companies, international organisations, they probably will check you out, and don't have anything up there that you don't want an employer to see that could compromise your chances of getting a job. Start looking at putting yourself on LinkedIn, even if you haven't started working yet. It's important for many reasons. One is it allows you to start creating lists and seeing what sort of jobs are being created in the industry and for the companies that you're working for. It's also good to start having a profile up there. Put up, especially if you've done either volunteer work and again internships, and you can put that up. It's very interesting in terms of your specialisms at university and your grades. Put those up as well. If you can get any endorsements for any companies that you've interned for, it'll make it much easier for you to apply for jobs and get yourself noted too. Okay, then the last thing is when you're actually in the process of applying for jobs. There's two things that you have to be. You have to be persistent because there's a lot of competition out there. But if you persist, you definitely will find something. It's a question of time. But most importantly, it's probably how do you differentiate yourself? And so a lot of the work that you've done, that you should have done previously, should really come out. But in terms of preparation, obviously the CV is really critical. There's some great templates out there that you can find online, and you should use these and see what works for you. There's a lot of information around keywords, so that when you apply for certain roles, obviously AI often comes into it. So you can get a lot of good advice on what are the keywords you should be putting into your CV. So again, so that you can get noticed. Probably the most important thing though for a CV, it's making sure that the key information is very easily found. I'll easily read 100 CVs a week, and that's kind of typical for a recruiter or for somebody in talent acquisition for a company. And so normally within a minute you need to be able to see, is this a valid candidate? Do they have the right experience, the right qualifications, and the right criteria that's relevant to the post that I'm applying for, that you're applying for? And if somebody has to look too much to find that information, if it's kind of too much of a flashy template, you're just going to give up and go on to the next one. So the CV, obviously, it's really key, and you hopefully people should be aware of this. But every time you apply for a position or to a company, you need to modify the CV to be right for that job or for that company. And you need to, if they're looking for certain criteria, you need to highlight that in your CV. You can't just have a CV that's very generic and you just send to everybody. It's got to be very relevant and very pertinent to that job. And again, emphasize your your university grades. If you've already been working for a while, any achievements that you have in those first few years of work are very good. Again, because you can have very good-looking CV, but CVs tend to look the same. So anything you can do to differentiate yourself in terms of achievements coming out, it's obviously it's really very, very key. So targeting companies, you can register on most companies' websites for information when there are new jobs. So you should be doing that. You should be following them, seeing, again, what sort of new projects are they winning, because they'll often do press releases on it, and just constantly be on the websites and seeing what opportunities that are there. Virtual university tours. In the past, at least in the UK, we used to have something called the milk rounds, where corporations would go and visit universities, and then you'd have a chance to go and talk about what you want to do and make yourself known to them. Those don't, obviously with COVID now, those don't exist. And I think going forward, things are going to be more and more virtual anyway. So just sign up, to the companies that are looking for graduates. There's a lot of activity on the web, so make sure you know that they're there. Job websites, probably less important when you're a graduate. Is usually when you've got some experience. But once you start working and you know that you're looking for your next role, it's worth putting your CV up onto these sites and keep looking. Again, you have to be careful of some of the sites that are coming up. Sometimes you have to pay to be on a job site. Just stay away from them. It's a scam. You don't need to. There are also some recruiters that will offer to help you find a job, but you have to pay. Just stay away from it. The way that it works for recruitment is that when a company finds a candidate and they go through a recruiter, they will pay the recruiter. There's absolutely no reason why, as a candidate, you should pay somebody to help you find a job. You'll find that it'll be a waste of money, and you should stay away from those. In terms of recruitment agencies, if you've been working for maybe a couple of years, it's quite good to find specialized recruiters that work in your industry or within your discipline, for sure. As a graduate, probably not so. Recruiters will be looking for experience. But there are many graduate recruitment agencies out there. They are by country, or they can be pan-European, or they can be by discipline as well. And these really are worth signing up to. You really just check them out and see what's available, because you definitely will increase your opportunities there. Then you need to look at, when it comes to interview, if you can get to an interview, really make sure that you do your homework in terms of being prepared for the interview. It's incredible, even with experienced people, how they don't prepare. Prepare your answers. Be sure to be able to talk about achievements that you've done and give concrete examples, and get used to talking. Even maybe do role play with friends, but get used to talking about what you've done, what you do well, why you're interested in the company, what is it that excites you about the position, why that company is of interest to you. There's a lot you can learn, and again on YouTube, there's and online, there's a lot of advice, free advice out there on what to do. One major change we're seeing this year, but I think it's going to be the same going forward, is that more and more the interview is going to be through video setup. It's very important that you practice within in front of a camera, that your body language is good, and that you can express yourself well. Obviously, dress for the interview, and also just make sure that behind you it's tidy. It's important that you give a very good impression. And as you go through the interview process, and even being hired, I think you've got to be prepared to be able to work remotely. I've hired several people this year for companies that they were recruited through video conference. They never actually met the people, their boss. They were onboarded, so they joined the company and they were trained, and they were working from home. So for many months, many of the people that I hired never actually went into the office and met people. So you need to start thinking that this is you need to prepare yourself for this. And as time goes on, you may find that as you work your way up through a company, and then you start applying for more senior posts, it may not be in the country that you're working for, the town that you want to work for. And companies are definitely more and more open now to employing people remotely. Obviously, it depends on what you do. But as you move into management positions, it's definitely becoming more acceptable to be remote. And if at the moment I have 5 jobs that are in either marketing and sales, and 4 of them are remote working. So we see that happening, and I think this is something that's a trend that's going to become more and more frequent. Then lastly, you should always have a plan A. What are the companies you want to work for? What is the discipline you want to work for? Where do you want to work? But you've got to be flexible, especially when you start off. You may have to think, if you may just want to work for a Fortune 100 company. But a lot of people do as well. And you should definitely try. But then you should think about what other companies can you work for. Maybe it's smaller companies. Maybe it's startups where maybe the training may not be so good, but you could also do a lot of self-training as well. But the experience in terms of working for a startup or a scale-up company can be really very exciting, and you can get a lot of experience. And larger companies may value that entrepreneurial approach going forward. So you should have a plan A, even plan B, and plan C, and be ready to work in a different city, maybe a different country as well. It's once you get into the working mode and you start having one job, maybe another job, it'll be easy to find the better jobs as you go on. But just when you're starting out, you need to get your foot on the rung as well of the ladder of the career ladder going forward. So that's in terms of enhancing your chances for the career. Those are the 3 key steps that I would propose based on what I see.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a few questions from the audience.
Okay, cool.
So we can start with those. So what do you like in your line of work, and what makes you stay in it?
Okay, so on the recruitment side, there's several things that I like. When I was a manager, because I've managed many people previously when I was in marketing, I liked the interaction with people. So I like the interaction I have with clients. I like the fact that after a while, you become a trusted advisor. And so then you get involved in the planning. So they'll ask you, in terms of their organization, they have their business objectives. And then, you can contribute to that. And you can say, well, if you're doing this, at this stage, you'll need these kind of people. At that stage, you need maybe different kind of people. And the order of doing it is this way. So I like that. And I like being part of a company and contributing to their success. I also like working with candidates, because I think I get a lot of satisfaction when somebody lands a great job, and it's the job that they want, and that you help them do that. So I get a lot of satisfaction from that. And then afterwards, I actually stay in contact with my candidates, and these candidates have become managers, and then they'll hire me to help them find staff. So that's very rewarding, I find. Yeah.
And regarding what you just said, as a recruiter, how do you find your young talents?
So it's usually it's always going to be a brief from a client. So I will be hired by a company to go and find a certain type of person. And for example, I've been working quite recently with an American company. It's a software company, and they were specifically looking for young salespeople. Had to be university graduates. They had to have superior grades. They preferred, going back to what I said earlier, they prefer people to be high achievers in their personal life. So if somebody had been an athlete at a regional level or an international level, then they thought if they can achieve there, they will achieve there, that side. So I was looking for a certain age group, looking for between 2 and 5 years experience, that had experience in selling software, not necessarily the software they had, but had it, in the 2 to 5 years, had constantly hit their targets, and you needed proof of that. So for that particular role, I had a very clear brief, and so what I would do is I would go through my network and ask people that either I'd work with, or I would ask candidates or other clients, who do you know that fits that description? I would go onto LinkedIn, and I would, as a recruiter, we have plug-in software into LinkedIn that gives us quite extensive search capabilities. And I would put in keywords. I would look for people with certain years' experience, certain university education, and then I would do that. And then I would contact the candidates that way. So as an example, and that happens quite often.
Okay. And has it ever happened to you to find a raw talent completely outside of your network?
So I have people come to me frequently, and I usually will speak with them. And so what I do is, when I have good candidates that apply to me spontaneously, that I usually will interview them and get an idea of what they want, and then I'll have their profiles at hand. And when I speak to my clients or companies that I'm interested in working with, and I understand what sort of business objectives they have and what sort of people they're looking for, then I'll propose these candidates to them, their profiles, to see if they would be interested. So I personally, I haven't placed a graduate first time, but I've placed people that have had between 2 and 5 years experience. I do get requests from time to time for internships. Because I work internationally, this is actually more from the UK, so I work with some UK companies, so I've had a request for internships, and I've been able to supply that side. So I think that's where I personally would help graduates. But in general, recruiters are quite specialised, and I have to say, they prefer to have experienced people.
Okay, and regarding, again, what you just say, most of the time you look for people between 2 and 5 years of experience. What we hear a lot as young people entering the work market is that most of the companies ask for young adults with 20 years of experience, ironically, of course.
Yeah.
But how can we, as young people that just graduated, can cope with that?
Yeah. It's hard. I think it's always been hard. But I think there's certain things you can do. I mean, if you can take on projects just projects where you can demonstrate certain skill sets, it's a way to differentiate yourself. So if it can be volunteer work, for example, and you can describe what you've done, it'll show that you have an aptitude, and you maybe can get references from that. So that's a way you can differentiate yourself, and that's when you should put on LinkedIn. You should put on your CV. On LinkedIn, there are certain things you can do as well, which may differentiate yourself. So, for example, if there's articles in an industry sector that are interesting, you can post those, share them, and comment and make a comment again, because when you're checked out, again, it'll differentiate yourself. And as graduates, I think really apply for internships, and I know that you get a lot of rejection. It's inevitable, but you need to keep looking, and you need to identify companies that hire. So also you've got the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, but be ready to look for smaller companies. There's a lot of startups and scale-ups that can give you good experience. In terms of the salaries, it's not going to be the same as if you go to Fortune, to a large company. But if you can show an interest and an aptitude for what they do, it's a good way of you to getting that first job. and you do that for 1 or 2 years, and it will make it easier because then you have the experience to go to maybe a bigger company.
And regarding finding the first company, what advice could you give for young people that are starting to search for their first job? Like which company they should target, how to find the right company for them?
So it depends on. So you need to define, what is it you want to do. First of all, what's your goal? So if you want to, maybe you want to manage an engineering department. So you need to maybe start off on the engineering side. So you know what sort of work you want to do. So then you need to define. So what are the sort of companies you would want to work for? Then you can you research the companies, and then you see, what are the products they're launching, what are the maybe product concepts, and then it's worth thinking. Well, maybe you can try contacting the hiring managers and show an interest, or try to reach out to ask them, what is it that's going to enhance their prospects of being hired by them, so that they, what can they be doing to make themselves noticed. So it takes some guts to do that, but you need to go out and try and network and make yourself noticed. I think that's the way. And again, if there's any projects you can do for free, again, and you can demonstrate that to a company. Again, it's going to enhance your chances of being done. But you need to think a little bit out of the box and think. Well, if you were an employer, what would you like to see from people that are applying for the job? Yeah.
And regarding those volunteering opportunities that we can have, we can even do during our studies and everything, do you think that having worked in an association during the courses of university will be recognized by companies? Because sometimes student associations might not be recognized, or you won't have a letter of recommendation, but you can get really useful skills that you can use that are not necessarily in your line of work. So how do the companies?
Yeah, I think where it can help is that it just shows that you have an initiative, that you want to achieve certain things, and that you go out of your way to do that, because that sort of behaviour can be useful to company, because they think, well, if somebody's doing that, then probably when they join the company, then they will go to the extra mile to either take on extra responsibilities or drive through. So it's a way of showing your behaviour and your skill set to differentiate yourself. Because if somebody's done something like that, you have two candidates that are being considered, and then you have somebody who hasn't done that, then there's a good chance that that's going to stand you in good stead, in terms of the decision-making process.
Okay, and so we have other questions from the audience. In your opinion, what are the most important skills?
So it depends on what you do, because.
Sorry, it was the soft skills.
Oh, soft skills.
Yeah.
So, in terms of organisation, being able to organise yourself and motivate yourself, especially if it's likely you're going to do more of remote working. I think it depends on what you do. So if you work in marketing, for example, you're going to need good emotional intelligence. To be able to work with people, to understand, to listen, to listen, to work with people, identify needs, and kind of be flexible and work with different departments, for example. So in marketing, as a soft skill set, that's important. In engineering, engineers, maybe emotional intelligence isn't that strong, and it's probably not so important. But obviously, in terms of being structured, being analytical, so that's a soft skill set that's going to be important to them. If you work in sales, then obviously good presentation skills, good persuasion skills are going to be important too. So it depends on what industry what discipline you're going to be working in. And
also regarding the recruitment. When you recruit someone, what are the key points you look at? Then again, I suppose it depends on the job.
So it depends on the company as well. But definitely, in terms of the job, the criteria. For a job description, it's very rare that somebody will have everything that the job's being asked for. The perfect candidate doesn't exist for a role. But at least being meeting or being able to prove that you meet certain criteria, and that's for the job post. So that's what I look for, because as a recruiter, I need to persuade my client that they need to interview, that they need to at least interview this person and why they should be interviewing it. So being able to meet some of the criteria as well, but also in terms of personality, it may be that they're looking for a certain type of person as well. Maybe somebody that's a strong team player, somebody that's going to contribute to other things within the company as well. And so if the person can demonstrate those those characteristics as well, that's going to be important. But the most important thing is to be able to communicate that the criteria that's being looked for is what you have, and then being able to give examples of why you have that. You can meet that criteria.
You also mentioned that the artificial intelligence before, and also how the COVID influenced the recruitment process and even the working in a company. So is technology affecting positively the recruitment process? And if yes, in which way and what are the limits?
Okay. So in terms of the recruitment process for AI, so what can be useful? What is useful is that it's easier to reach out to a lot more potential candidates more quickly, and identify candidates that are that will fit a certain amount of criteria for sure. So in terms of, for me, when I do searching for LinkedIn, for example, I use a plugin, and so it helps me do that. It also helps me reach out to a lot of people at a given time, to a lot of candidates. So on that side, it can be easier to find people who can match the criteria, as long as they have the criteria, as long as they have that criteria in LinkedIn themselves. So you obviously got to do that. I don't use it myself, but for large companies, when they advertise for roles, they'll have AI to scan CVs and look for certain criteria. So like keywords, maybe qualifications, age and so on, in terms of experience. So that has a positive effect for the company, but unless you communicate well what you have, you won't get in. So what it means as a candidate, you've got to be a lot more specific. And again, it comes to when you apply for a job and you send your CV, make sure it's relevant. You have keywords and it's very relevant to the ad. Otherwise, you won't get past the first hurdle.
So we should definitely focus on some really important keywords.
Absolutely,
in the CV and put them.
And when you see a job description, really understand what they're looking for. Make sure it's relevant. So
that goes as well with what you said before, that it's really important to adapt the CV to the job that you apply for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and one thing you can do as well is that when you look at companies, and often you can find similar people in companies, and if there's somebody that's in a job that you would like to do, and you see that there's an opening for it, look at their profile. And see, okay, so this person has that job, and they have certain elements in their profile. But and if you have the same, make sure that you repeat that as well, reflect that too. A bit of detective work.
That's a very good tip. And regarding the AI part, how do you combine the human part with the AI, since it's becoming bigger and bigger and is taking a lot of importance in the working world?
Yeah, so for me, with the AI, it's a good way to get to identify candidates. And the same, you get talent acquisition managers at mid-sized to large companies who will do the same. So AI can be quite good in terms of identifying it. But in terms of the fit, and also making sure that just because somebody writes it on a CV doesn't mean to say it's always going to be true. So there's a lot of suspicion around that. It's when you actually talk to candidates and you understand and you get them to expand on what they've done. That's where the human side comes in, and also on the personality side as well. You may have a company where teamwork is less important. They just want achievers, people that are going to go out and drive, maybe get sales. But in other companies, it's important that somebody's a team player, and they, when they join a team, especially if it's a small team, it's very important that a person fits in. So you need to understand what's important to that team and make sure that person can do that. And again, if they've been working on projects or activities, it's a good way to understand. Okay, so in this circumstance, they have a certain type of characteristics, so it's going to be good for that. And more, I think, especially with the smaller companies, the kind of person that's joining a company is just as important as the qualifications and the performance as well. But if you're in a startup, and there may be 10 people in the startup, so if you get 2 people that aren't right, that's a fifth of the company that's not fitting in with the team, and it's going to have dire circumstances. So as a recruiter, there's that human element definitely of really understanding, is this person going to be a good fit, and then persuading the company that this person's going to be a good fit.
And before this masterclass, we had a masterclass about diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that evolving? And is it something recruiters care about nowadays? And even big companies?
Yeah, definitely so. Actually, I think some countries are more advanced on that side than others. If I'm really honest, I think the UK, for example, takes it really quite seriously. In Switzerland, it tends to be more the larger companies that are aware of it. But I think going forward, I think it's going to become more and more important for sure. Yeah, it's definitely something that will be spoken about. It's very hard for a company to give directives of what sort of people they want to hire, for obvious reasons. But what I've seen, from my personal experience, but also working with as a recruiter for companies, is that the more diverse a team is, the better performing it is. So I think my feeling is that hiring managers are more aware of this now, and definitely, it's definitely something that they're more sensitive to in terms of the hiring. Yes.
So do you, as a recruiter, tend to show profiles that are more diverse in reaction to that? For me, it's can the person do the job, and will fit in the team. So it's definitely something I take it's definitely something I take into account. But I can only work with the candidates I have. Sure.
But definitely from a company perspective, it's definitely becoming more and more important. And companies will state publicly that it is something that's more important to them. Yeah.
And also more regarding the universities, what can universities do better to prepare the students for the working world, and what do you see students lack the most that could be better?
Okay, for universities to prepare, I think that they should be prepared to give courses in terms of helping. Actually, I'm not sure actually what universities do, to be frank. But what they should be doing, if they aren't already, is giving advice to students about basically I think what I've gone through. How can they enhance their chances of finding the next role for sure? I also think that universities should be having closer contacts with local companies, and give companies the chance to meet students, and students to actually meet companies, and maybe even do projects together, because I think university can be very attractive to companies because they have obviously fantastic graduates, and so I think they can probably do more in terms of having more contact between the students and the companies.
And yes, regarding also the still in the topic of university and academic courses, would you recommend to focus more on the academic career or like being an entrepreneur? Do you think that the academic world will get overrun by young people developing themselves on their own?
Yeah, I don't know. I think people have to be more entrepreneurial for sure. I think it's a good skill set. It's a good skill set to have. But things, until you start working, experience is everything. So I think the sooner you can get experience, then you can decide whether people need to be more entrepreneurial than others. And not everybody can be entrepreneurial. I think that it's more important to do everything you can to enhance your chances of finding the first job, and then assess where you go from there. And you should always be assessing your skill sets, the experience, what you're good at in terms of the future direction. And then you can decide whether you become an entrepreneur yourself, or you continue working for corporations and companies, which is very good too. So.
And to change from the perspective, as a recruiter, for you, how do you think a good recruiter should be?
So first of all, as a recruiter, you need to be specialized, because you need to understand the industry. You need to understand what makes the company successful. You need to understand the roles in the company or the sector that you work in, so that you can then identify the right candidates. So as a recruiter, you need to be specialized. You definitely need to have high EQ. You need to understand what your clients want and what's important to them, and you need to understand which candidates are going to fit into the fit with the client. So I think high EQ is really important in addition to being specialized. I think recruiters that are too broad don't really add any value either to candidates or to companies, and in the end they're just trying to push people into open positions.
And now we have like for people now, nowadays young people tend to focus not focus anymore on one topic, but more like get a few things from everywhere. And you, as a recruiter, do you think it's better to become an expert on one topic, or rather have general knowledge and skills on many?
This is my personal opinion, and there are recruiters that disagree with this. But on my side, I think that it's better to be specialized and succeed in something, because you can always change afterwards. If you develop a specialized knowledge and you become an expert, you become valuable to companies that need that specialized knowledge. Because once you've achieved that, you can move into more general, maybe into more general roles. And the skill set, the soft skills that you've had that make you achieve, that are successful in a specialized side, can be useful elsewhere. But the trouble is, if you're too general, there's a lot of people that are very general, and it's very hard to distinguish yourself from someone else. But if you can be successful in a specialist field, then in my opinion, you always have more chance to succeed and for companies to want to hire you, because you have that maybe other people can't have. And in fact, as a recruiter, when we're looking for people, most of the time when I find people, they're not looking for jobs. I think that a statistic, I'm not sure if it's true, but we always talk about it. It feels like it. Is that 80% of the people that are hired by recruiters aren't looking for a job. They're identified because they have the skill sets and the experience to match a role, and then we go out and we persuade them to leave their company to join another company. So achieving excellence in a specialist field for me is definitely the most important thing.
Okay. And there is the concept of a portfolio of careers, meaning that the fact that people have many different jobs at the same time, and not only one for their whole life. Like there's a saying that our generation will probably have 4 to 5 jobs in their lifetime, as the generations of our parents were more like they needed to focus on one job and have it for their lives.
Yeah.
What's your perception of these changes of mentality?
Yeah, but I think it's been a while like that. I think for myself, my time in Switzerland, I think I worked for about 7 different companies, in 25 years already. So, so definitely, it's pretty unrealistic that somebody could expect to be with one organisation for the whole career. I mean, it can happen, but it's unlikely that somebody would have that. I think so. So already, people will be changing companies on a regular basis. What's important from a employer perspective and also from a recruitment side is that it's okay to change jobs, but when I look at a CV and I see, maybe more for people that have been working for 10 years, but if somebody's changed their job every year, it's not a good sign. Because companies will want to invest in someone. If you work in sales, it's acceptable for somebody to change their job every 2 to 3 years. And in fact, if you stay with a company for 10 years, it's looked as negative. Yeah, marketing, people change their jobs less frequently, but again, every 3 to 4 years, it's acceptable because it's usually because they progressed or they've gone into a different sector. It's okay. So definitely, people should expect that they are not going to stay with the same company for forever, for sure. And that's already a reality, and it's been a reality for probably 10, 15, 20 years already.
Then again, I think it also depends on the line of work as well.
Yeah, exactly. If you work for a government, for example, you're going to only work for one government. They
tend to stay longer.
but you'll probably change roles or departments, anyway within that company.
Okay, thank you. Since this masterclass is coming to an end, would you like to add something or a tip for the audience that is watching us?
Yeah, I think it's just just to reiterate is that you need to know, you need to have a direction. You need a plan of where you're going in a career, and you can change it. But then you should always be thinking about how can you enhance your chances of succeeding, and whether it's through, obviously academic grades, it's always important. But if you can prove that you achieve your targets or overachieve constantly, you're always going to enhance your chances. Anything you can do to differentiate yourself, again, through different projects, volunteering, or even studying, you're always going to enhance yourself. You've got to find a way to stand out, and the more you can do that, the more chances you have of succeeding as you go forward.
So thank you a lot, Peter, for being here today. Thank you, the audience, for following us on live, or for the ones that are rewatching this masterclass. Have a nice evening.